The Rams traded who for what? That's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Ramley, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Rams, but an emergency breaking news reaction episode of Locked On Rams. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMac_LA. And of course, as always, I'm joined by the people's champ, Mr. Travis Rogers. You can follow him on X at Travis Rogers. And we're going to waste no time. Let's get right into it. Sent shockwaves through the Rams universe. It was announced today that Ernest Jones has been traded to the Tennessee Titans and a 2026 sixth-round pick for a 2026 fifth-round pick. So a late-round pick swap for Ernest Jones, and he is a Titan. The Rams acted fast. They cleared this drama up quick, and the Rams now are without their green dot guy. Someone had a C on his chest last season, someone who Aaron Donald said he was giving this defense to, the keys to this Rams defense. Well, it's a big shakeup. So I'll start by saying this, Travis. The Rams know something that we don't. The Rams have a plan. And I'll tell you, the first, when I saw it on my phone, I fell to my knees at a Chipotle. Right? I fell to my knees at a Chipotle. And as I was starting to think about it, we'll get into it. But the Rams know something that we don't.
Okay, sure. I hope so. I hope there's a plan B, because my first reaction wasn't that they have something up their sleeve. I hope that they do. We can talk about that in a second. But my first response was, do not threaten them. Do not play with this team. Do not try to think that you have leverage that you may not have. If you're Aaron Donald, you might be able to try something like this. If you're Matthew Stafford, you might be able to do something like this. But if you are somebody that is not irreplaceable, and clearly the Rams felt that Ernest Jones was not irreplaceable, if you make waves, if you make noise, if you are the squeaky wheel, you will not last. That was the takeaway from me, without a doubt. Maybe there is a plan B, DMAC, and I hope so. We can kind of go through the potential options right there. But the fact of the matter is, everything that you just said, it got noisy, and they said, we're done. Go to Tennessee. You don't want to be here. We don't want you here. Like you said, we're talking about a fifth and a sixth round pick swap. That's nothing. That is nothing. And they just basically said, you don't want to be here. We don't want you here. And that is a crystal clear message to everybody else in that locker room about what you better be careful asking for.
See, and that's why this is a very complicated deal for me, because, of course, trust the Rams. I trust Sean McVay, their vision. I mean, you get $3.1 million in cap space. What do you do with that? I mean, do you need a left tackle? And Bakhtiari still out there? Do you kind of make a move, shuffle things around to get that? We'll see what that entails. But just before we even get there, are the Rams a better football team today than they were yesterday without Ernest Jones? I think the answer unequivocally is capitalized no, right?
No, they're not.
And sure, you can say that that's a position that isn't in vogue in the NFL anymore. You can say that Chris Shula is going to use more safeties and less linebackers. That's a part of his scheme. All that's okay. But just because you don't value that position for the Rams doesn't mean you give away a player for essentially nothing, a bag of having Funyuns in a better parking space just because of that. And yes, there was drama in the building because he was going to probably have this as a cloud the entire season, but let's not act like he didn't make it very clear that he was willing to play out the final year of his contract without an extension, and he's fully incentivized to go out there and perform to secure a big bag in the offseason. And whatever that bag is, the Rams get a compensation pick from that. And bottom line is, you would have gotten more value from Ernest Jones as a player if he plays the rest of the season and he's the captain. He helps usher this new era of Rams football on that side of the ball, and then you part ways. So it's a little puzzling. It's perplexing on a lot of ends. And hey, a lot of pressure on Spates. I mean, is he that guy? Yes.
I don't know
on a guy that's
the first crack at it. I think the first crack is probably going to go to Christian Roseboom, and Reader, and then maybe Spates after that.
Jake Hummel had the green dot during preseason.
Jake Hummel is an option too. But look, I think that on paper, the idea of, hey, I want out. No, play here for one more year and then you can leave and we'll get the compensatory pick and all that stuff. That makes sense on paper. But clearly the Rams felt that didn't make sense for them, whether that's just to send a message, which maybe is part of it, or maybe they felt that they would not get the performance out of the player that they needed to get, that having him out of the building would be better than him in the building, unhappy, playing at a level that maybe they would be dissatisfied with. I think that's a huge part of it. Let me just throw this out there. I was talking with some folks today, and when I brought it up, everybody kind of went, that's kind of interesting. Don't you pick up the phone to Aaron Donald right now? Don't you look? And maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's no, man. I'm retired. Lose my number. Don't call me back. But is this not exactly the scenario where you break glass in case of emergency? We need a green dot guy. We need a leader on this defense because you look around and who the defensive leader is right now. I don't know. Is it Jared Verse? Is it Braden Fisk? Rookies? Is it Braden? Is it a guy like Kobe Turner, who's in his second year? Byron, I mean, there really isn't anybody that jumps off at you. Maybe Aaron Donald doesn't have to play 60 snaps a Sunday. Maybe it's a third of that. Maybe it's play on third down. Maybe it's set the tone in the locker room and all these sorts of things. But, whatever plan B is, for me at least, it would include a phone call to Aaron Donald and say, hey, I saw you beat Shady McCoy in that race. Why don't you there's some
hauling ass.
He still looks amazing. So I would certainly start there. I think the answer would probably be no. I'm totally guessing right here, but that's the first thing I would do to try to fix this.
Absolutely. I mean, if this somehow, some way sparks something in Aaron Donald where he says, I have to save my beloved Los Angeles Rams because they need my fearless leadership, my production, then yeah, absolutely. AD, if you're watching this, put those cleats on, get that helmet ready, and let's ride. But having said that, if you're Aaron Donald on the same token, don't you just wonder about what this says about how all in this team is for the 2024 Rams when you have a limited window with Matthew Stafford and you are essentially giving away the most experienced player that as far as where he's at and what he can do for this team. I mean, I think that would probably lead you to say, do I have to come back and do all the work on the group project, but everyone's going to get an A? Right? I mean, I've done that for years. Does he want to put that on his shoulders again? I'm not so sure. And it makes you wonder, too. Ernest Jones, Aaron Donald, close relationship. He makes you wonder how he feels about that. So, hey, look, trust me, anything to get AD back. Absolutely, 100%. But just kind of rewinding here, Travis, and we talked about it in these episodes about Ernest Jones. Why was he not going to be in the picture? Well, one, the Rams just do not pay linebackers. That's not just what they do. But also, it's not just that, right? If he was fully healthy and the knee was an issue, I think that he's still a Ram today. I truly believe that 100%. I think
that's possible. I think that, the knee injury could certainly have a big part of this. I think you're probably right there. But I think the piece of the puzzle that we don't know yet, and I'm sure it'll come out because, everybody's going to spin their side of the story, whether just directly or through leaks or anything else. But we don't know what Ernest Jones was asking for. Maybe he was asking for something that was totally out of line. Maybe he was asking for something that's just a complete non-starter. It's one thing if, the team is offering X, the player wants Y, and there's a middle ground to be found right there. But if the team is offering, C and the player is asking for X, there's a lot of ground. We're not getting anywhere. We're not going to get to that middle ground. And maybe they decided that just was a number that they could never get to. Plus, like we talked about, the fact that they don't do Messi, plus the fact that that's a position that perhaps they don't particularly value, plus the fact that maybe they think they've got some dudes, some dogs in Verse and Fisk and Young and Turner and these guys, and they felt like they can have a defense that maybe doesn't have to have that experience. He's not great in coverage. Maybe they feel like they got some guys that might be able to do a little bit better in that regard. But I was really surprised that it came to this because, to your point, Doug, like just straight up, are they better today than they were yesterday? The answer is no. I think what happens next is we're talking about this a week from now. We're getting ready to go against the Lions. Are they better than they were before the trade? I think that's a question that we need to ask. But it was a big surprise. But like I said at the beginning, coming all the way back to full circle, they don't do this, man. If you are noisy, you get shown the door. I mean, Todd Gurley, Jared Goff, and just right on. And Goff really wasn't even noisy. Goff just didn't play particularly well for a period of time. But if you dig your heels in with this stuff, bye. They're just not playing around with that.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And as far as the contract goes, I do think that they were looking top 5 to 10 as far as the market. And Tremaine Edmonds, he got $72 million from the Bears. And you're talking about a Jones who's essentially a top 7, 8, 9 linebacker, the best blitzing linebacker in the sport. But the reason I bring up the knees is not just the long-term investment. I don't think there's a world, even if he had healthy knees, that they would make a big-time top-of-the-market deal towards him. But I think this year specifically, the knee issues in the offseason, he dealt with them also last season, also in OTAs. Then a few weeks ago, he's out for practice for a couple of days. And Sean McVay told the media it was for the same thing. And during that time, when he wasn't on the field, you had Omar Speights. You had guys stepping up and them saying, oh, wait a second, he can do that. He can perform just fine. Plus the safeties, plus Crucial's defense. They're like, is it going to be that big of a loss to them?
We'll find out, right? We will find out pretty quickly because, look, maybe Speights or, I think we kind of know what you have in Roseboom. You know what you have in Hummel. You know what you have in Reeder. You know what you have in those guys. For better or for worse, at least you can kind of you can game plan with what you can expect from those guys. They've been around enough. The Speights part of this is interesting. If they've seen enough in practice, we saw him kind of pop in preseason. And I know it's preseason, so I'm not putting a ton of stock in it, but he did look pretty good in the time that we saw him. Maybe Chris Shula, maybe Sean McVay said, look, this guy's ready. We found our guy. We got, I don't want to say lucky because they signed him as an undrafted free agent, but they found the guy that may be able to slide in. That's a fraction of the cost. It's not noisy. It's not messy. And we've seen it happen before, maybe not with an undrafted player, but I'll go back to John Johnson several years ago where he was kind of a mid-round pick. And the next thing you know, you turn around in week 5, 6, he's starting at safety. Maybe there's just kind of jump-starting this whole process with somebody like Speights. I think they'll start with Roseboom, but I would not be surprised to see Speights get a lot of opportunities here in the early part, unless, going back to your original point, they have something up their sleeve that we'll find out in the next few days.
Yeah, that's a great point. You accelerate his development by giving Speights first team reps. And if you're looking at this, like, wow, we got an undrafted free agent on a rookie tenure, and let's hit the ground running. Let's fast track the process of having him step into that role and perform the way he does. And you look at that and you hope for the best, but still, it's still unrealistic to think that he's going to perform like Ernest Jones did last season and provide that leadership and those intangibles. It just doesn't happen that often. I mean, for me, if I'm looking at it that way, I'm saying, you know what? I'd rather give up Roseboom, give Speights those opportunities. And if he shines in those opportunities, then you're not as hesitant to say, you know what, Jones, the knee's not the same this year. Give him those shots. Let him go and see if he can perform in there when he gets those chances. And then you run with it. But it's just, man, this is a tough one. Like I said, I think I'm not going to be, Rams fans are, this is the most upset I've seen Rams fans since it was St. Louis Rams fans and they left for LA. I mean, they're upset.
I get it. I'm not saying they shouldn't be. I can understand why they would be upset right here. And look, here's the reality of it, D-Mac. If this team is, let's just pick a nice round number, like 8 games, roughly half of the season. If this team's 3-5 or something like that, and the reason they're 3-5 is because they're losing games because their defense can't stop anybody, this is a question that they're going to have to answer. This is the first time, I think, in a while that they're kind of sticking their neck out a little bit for some criticism, because if it doesn't work, this is an easy one to point to and say, hey, what were you guys doing? Why not just give the guy his money? Why not just do what you suggested, which is, hey, let him play out the remainder of his contract. And then if he leaves at the end of the year, he leaves at the end of the year, because this is not complicated to see that if this doesn't work and the Rams struggle because of it, they're going to take a bunch of heat. Now, they've gotten a lot more of these things right than they've gotten wrong, but it's not like you never get them wrong. Sometimes you're going to, but this is a very big swing. It's a big surprise, but clearly the Rams hate noise, drama, distraction. They just simply don't do it.
Yeah, that's the end of the day. That's what was, I think, the biggest factor here. And it kind of leads me to believe, okay, I mean, how emotional were you in this decision? I mean, I do think that you look at Ernest Jones and the tweet that he tweeted and then he deleted it, that got messy. So I don't think the agent, from a tactical standpoint, did what he should have done if he wanted to keep him on the Rams. And Sean McVay, he told reporters today that it was a football decision, what we felt was best for the football team. Amazing guy. He was great for us for a few years, but we felt that this was best for our football team. You guys are all shocked, but we feel really good about our football team. So either he's playing 40 chess and we're all playing checkers, or we're going to look back at this defense struggles all season long, and it looks like they lack veteran leadership and production from that spot. Hey, this could be something we point to for why the Rams didn't have the season we all thought they were going to have.
Look, I've said it once. I've said it a million times. The everydayers know it. In Sean McVay, I trust, but I have a really hard time buying that one. I have a really hard time buying that one. That we like what we have. We like the guy. Just this is a football. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm not buying that one quite yet. Maybe this is another example where the end of the year we're saying, boy, we thought he was smart to begin with. We thought they were ahead of the curve to begin with. They were even further ahead than we thought. That Ernest Jones thing worked out exactly how they thought it was. Maybe we're talking about Spates or some other player being, the linchpin to a high-level defense. It's certainly possible, but I'm going to wait to be proven wrong on that one. I go back to what you said at the beginning. Are they a better team today than they were yesterday with Ernest Jones in Tennessee? They're not.
Exactly. It's a lot of pressure on Space as well. And the rest of that linebacker core, and it's a position that's not getting the love it in the past. But we'll talk more about this one on tomorrow's show. Lots to unpack with this one. We'll see what happens. We'll see what they do. I mean, $3 million is not a ton of money to work with, but I think that we'll see what they do in the next couple of days and what that means.
Call AD. Call AD.
Call AD.
Hey,
AD.
I don't know if you heard, but hey, we need a little leadership in this side of the room. What are you thinking? You good? You ready? I'd pick up the phone, man.
If AD came back, I would forget everything I ever knew about Ernest Jones. I wouldn't even remember the name, the guy. I would etch a sketch in my brain. I mean, he would make me forget him in absolute heartbeat. So if something like that were to happen, you make some additions. But this organization, you have equity. I mean, you have a Super Bowl. You've been successful pretty much every single season recently. But I see people out there saying settle for less. And what he here's the thing, before we wrap this up, and we're going to wrap this up right now, is I'm not really upset about what they got in return for him. I mean, to be honest, that's just what he was worth. Sure, ideally, you could have done without the pick swap, but he's worth a 5th-round pick. You weren't going to get a 3rd-round pick for Ernest Jones, right? That was never going to happen. 1. 2, never we're going to sign him long-term, but I do think that you really gave away a very useful piece to a defense that has a lot of question marks. And there's going to be a black hole until someone proves otherwise. So let's prove someone can step and play that position. Let's see how Chris Shula's defense looks. But right now, hey, the Rams did what they did, and they're going to have to be answering this question for a while until it proves to be the right decision.
It's big. It's a big swing. It's a big swing. And look, we always overreact to week 1 in the NFL anyway, just because it's fun to overreact to week 1 in the NFL. They give up a truckload of points. Okay, it's on. It's on.
If Omar Spates missed the tackle or Rose missed the tackle, I'm going to be like Leonardo DiCaprio meme from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where he's pointing at the thing. That's going to be me every time with the puck. I'm going to be absolutely livid every time it happens. They don't blitz properly, but hey, lots of news happening in Ramsland. And stay tuned tomorrow. We're going to break down the 53-man roster. We got our big takeaways, but that's to do it for this emergency episode of Locked On Rams. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA, and you can follow the People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers, at Travis Rogers. Until next time, whose house? It's Locked On Rams house.